to some of the more pertinent issues for women participating in the labor force, labor market, such as the workplace gender equality issues, as well as the child care and unpaid care and domestic work support. So we have really covered the whole range. Moving forward, what we will be taking forward will be in the following areas. First of all, there was discussion about the gender-responsive procurement, which is the topic that we have jointly agreed in the previous Gender Summit, MDB Gender Summit in Washington when it was organized by the Inter-American Development Bank. There was a joint commit by the participating multilateral development banks to commit ourselves to certain levels of a gender-responsive procurement, either to work on our own MDB's internal procurement, such as food services or the event services procurement, or the building maintenance and so on, or to support our partner governments to provide the ecosystem for gender-responsive procurement, which is to also support the women entrepreneurs to have more opportunity to have access to publicly provided procurement. The third element is to do that gender-responsive procurement at the level of the private sector, through the private sector. And we are really happy to see that this time there was the breakout session this morning, and there was a very good discussion. We have seen also a great good practices that are coming in some of the African countries, as well as across different regions. And this is something that we see as that the role of the multilateral development banks and gender working group to see how much progress we've been making on the certain topics. So this was a very good takeaway for us. So other takeaways that we see, which is something that is not that is familiar to this crowd. Number one is the importance of data. I mean, again and again, this is something that is coming up again and again when we discuss the sustainable development. So again and again, this lack of data issue comes up across any topic. And I come from the Asian Development Bank, and we have done recently of the benchmarking study across all the gender indicators across not just in Sustainable Development Goal number 5, which is the gender equality and women's empowerment, but also across gender elements across all the other 16 SDG goals. And we have found that even the benchmarking, even the baseline is available for only 21% of what is necessary. So moving forward, this is Asia-Pacific region that where people think that we are more ahead in terms of data availability, and it is quite shocking. Here also, we have been confirming that the lack of data is one area that we need to continue to follow up, and the time is ripe also that in parallel to this, there is a Beijing Plus 25 discussion in preparation for next year, and hopefully also as a MDB working group on gender, we can support this area. Another issue that is coming up is the importance of scale. So a lot of women entrepreneurs activities could be very micro level, but when you network across, it becomes a power. It becomes a huge power. So women networking with other women and making the scale, whether it is again among the women entrepreneurs, but also in other topics, is very, very crucial. And then finally, this is something that we came up in some of that came up at some of the session, is that we need to talk not only about the practical access issues, women's access to services, the financial services, and the policies, and so on, but we need to also go beyond to talk about transformative gender agenda, which is once again in Sustainable Development Goal 5, that clearly sets out the structural gender inequalities and gender discriminations in terms of legal provisions, in terms of the importance of not just reducing, for example, women's time poverty, for example, to provide water supply, access to water supply, which reduces women's time spent on fetching water, but that's not sufficient. We need to look into the household sharing of responsibility of unpaid care and domestic work. Otherwise, this whole notion of changing the stereotypes and gender roles within the households, within the community, and within the society is not going to be changing. If these do not change, the acceleration of the gender equality and the women's empowerment will be limited. So these are some of the takeaways that we would like to take back to the Multilateral Development Bank Working Group. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chairperson Tanaka. Next, we'd like to introduce Dr. Jennifer Blanca, Vice President for Agriculture, Human, and Social Development at African Development Bank.
Thanks, Alfonso, and delighted to be here with our partners in what has been quite an exciting couple of days. And I would hope that many of you feel the same way, if not all of you feel the same way, that a lot has happened over the last 2 days. What I'll do, Tsunami has laid out sort of, the global approach, and indeed we're part of that, and we're involved in the working groups, and I think certainly we will keep moving forward on that. But I would like to place an Africa lens on what we've been discussing, because this is the first time that the Global Gender Summit has happened in Africa, and it's very exciting. And I would say probably one of the big things about this year for us is that it's been very action-oriented. Of course, we've had technical discussions, which are very important to understand where things are going, how we can work better together. But we've done a lot in terms of coming out with big, bold initiatives and ideas, and this is something that we really want to work towards going forward, really action, as well as thinking about these issues. This has been a very important platform. It's been an important platform bringing together our partners. It's been an important platform bringing together the governments. It's been an important platform bringing civil society leaders and businesses, especially very, very interesting women business leaders, and including from the creative industries, and we see that just outside the room, who are doing incredible things. And so, really bringing everyone together for a networking opportunity, but also for looking at what can be done in Africa concretely. And some of the highlights, and I think just kind of going back to looking at this issue in Africa, but anywhere, we know that women are not flowers to be protected. The dialogue here has really been around the fact that women are a force to be unleashed in order and supported in order to ensure that they can really do their part in development, particularly in Africa. Already, women are such a hugely important part of the development process here. So how do we unleash them so they can do even more, grow businesses, hire more women, hire young people, and really provide the goods and services that are needed in the African economy, so we do a lot less importing and a lot more job creation here on the continent. One of the things that we talked about a lot here, and I'll just focus for a moment, in case anybody missed it, we did launch a very big platform for financing women called AFAWA, Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa. Now, we were already sort of rolling it out, but the really big launch has been here, particularly because it's a three-pronged approach that includes a guarantee platform that we're going to be working with the Africa Guarantee Fund through in order to ensure that we're able to de-risk the banks so that they can lend more to women. The second pillar is very much around technical assistance to make sure women as well as banks know how to do the lending. We know that women have a different risk profile, they have different collateral profiles, and therefore how do you look at that from a banking perspective, but also providing women with all the technical assistance they need in order to develop good business plans and ideas, how to run a business, how to think about financials, and so on and so forth. And finally, and this is very important here, and we had a great meeting at the ministerial level with all of the gender ministers just over lunch, launch about what sorts of policies are needed in order to make this sustainable. So the whole point of this effort, and we're working with all of our partners on this and with financial institutions throughout Africa, is to ensure that we're doing something that will outlive us. Because we know that we're going to de-risk the lending to women, but all the banks are going to see is that women are a great business opportunity. They're a great investment. We know that women are a great investment, and after that, they will take the risk on themselves because they will note that there's a lot less risk than they thought. So that's the first big thing that we launched. We also launched a couple of platforms that are very important. A big one that was just launched this morning, and it was standing room only, even I couldn't get in the room, is called 50 Million African Women Speak. And it's really, I mean, it's about connecting women to financial institutions and things of that nature, but especially connecting women to each other, providing those networking opportunities across Africa, because we know that you can't be everywhere, and men have a lot of ways of networking and connecting with each other, and this is a way to sort of override this and make sure that women also have such a possibility. Similarly, we launched a Fashionomics online platform, which is specifically for sort of the cotton to catwalk value chain, which is an area, and it's a B2B and B2C platform, the first ever in Africa for the fashion industry, and really making sure, again, that we're providing everything needed so that women and young people quite often, but people catering often to women, hiring a lot of women, employing a lot of women, and providing very valuable revenue for women, are able to really build their businesses, and also, importantly, ensure that Africa is able to gain from its amazing cultural industries, which are quite often exported, and the continent sees nothing out of the beautiful designs that are being produced elsewhere. Finally, and just to end, as Tsunami said, there's a dearth of data on these issues, and so we launched the Africa Gender Index together with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. And basically the bottom line is, if you don't measure it, you don't do it. And if you don't measure it, it means you don't care about it. And we care about it. And I think African governments do care about it. So we're making sure that we get the data out there on economic, social, and political outcomes for women in Africa, in terms of, you know, whether they're able to thrive in their environments. This is something that we will do every 2 years, similar to the planning for the Global Gender Summit. And so just to end on that, you know, it's true, you do what you measure, and I think this summit has been really all about doing, and doing more, and doing faster, accelerating what we're doing, and that's what we plan to do together with our partners going forward. Thank you very much for being here.
Excellent, thank you, Vice President. And of course, now we'd like to welcome the Honorable Celine Nira Habimana, Minister of Gender and Family Promotion, Rwanda.
Thank you. Excellencies here present, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'd like to first and foremost thank the African Development Bank and the multilateral banks that have chosen Africa and Rwanda to host this Global Gender Summit 2019. As I said, we are very much honored to host you, and in addition, we were privileged also to have on this soil launched the AFAWA, the first ever responsive financing facility for women. Rwanda has been chosen, and indeed, we've received 1,219 guests from all continents, and they have been carrying out the discussions and conversations of high caliber, where we had at the starting point inspiration from our leaders from our VVIPs, heads of state in the government, first ladies, CEOs, and all seasoned people that you've been able to hear, to listen to, and to attend to other collaborative and interactive sessions. All was about unpacking the constraints to women, to gender equality. We were welcomed this session and the theme because here in Rwanda, our governance is precisely in the line of leaving no one behind. It is an inclusive governance where immediately at the outset, as our president mentioned yesterday, we knew it from the beginning that gender equality and women empowerment is a true way for sustainable development. We've put in place an inclusive governance where we knew that no one has to be left behind on any pretext, not because of gender and at this particular time, not because of his or her socio-economic status. This is why during this past 25 years, we've been concentrating on gender equality into various aspects, starting by creating a conducive environment, where we started by uprooting, revising, abolishing all discriminatory laws that generally were discriminating women. And fortunately, at this juncture, we have to report, and happy to report that we have no discriminatory laws, despite the fact that having good laws is one thing, and implementation is another. So we have some challenges in implementation, and as other countries, as you know, no country in the world has reached gender parity or gender equality. So we are struggling, despite the fact that we are happy of the achievements that you've achieved, to have so far in various sectors, being economic, social, and governance. Focusing on the theme of the summit, despite that it is unpacking constraint that to gender equality, but nevertheless we have been focusing on the economic empowerment of women, or women access to finance. And in this field, we've been working tirelessly to have women included in the financial sector and formally. To start by an example, in 2012, we had only 36% of women who were financially included. But we took two game-changing decisions of including women in land ownership. So in 2013, actually 2 or 3 laws actually helped to boost women in economic empowerment. One is women's rights to land. Another one is women, the law on the state finance asked or requested all budget institutions to show how their budget are going to respond or to take into consideration gender, men and women into their execution and implementation. That's the second one. But the third one, not through, after putting in place the strategy of access of women and youth to finance, we have created a fund, a development business development fund, that has a special window or wing for women, and special advisors also, through which women can access loan using 75% from that guarantee fund. They are also asked to bring 10% for their contribution, and the government of Rwanda, through Ministry of Gender and Family Promotion, the government provides incentive of a grant of 15%. After putting in place these three mechanisms, laws and policies, plus other, of course, conducive environment, the next survey that followed in 2016, we've seen the women inclusion formally included passing from 36% to 63%. And that was something that we are happy with. And also women in informal, who are informally included are also 24%, and the ones who are excluded are 13%. We are not happy. We are happy for the stride made, but we are not happy because we want all women included, because we want to leave no one behind. So this conference for us has been an opportunity to learn, to peer learn from other participants, yes, but also to have this facility of AFAWA launched here, and also to understand it and how it is going to be beneficial not only to Rwandan women and the grassroots women, but also for women on the continent. And it is with this understanding of including financially all women here in Rwanda, in Africa, that we fully support the AFAWA and have supported it actually through its vision, objectives, but also financially as much as we can. This is how yesterday, for some who were not here in the press conference, government of Rwanda has provided a support of $1 million for the contribution to the facility.
Thank you.
Therefore, with that, it was important for the whole African country participating, because this is for African women, actually, women in Africa, the last two words, AFAWA. We had a discussion with my fellow ministers of gender around the lunchtime, where everyone had the opportunity to understand how this is going to work in the interest of women of Africa and on the grassroots level. And I understand that the following work is coming here in Rwanda and in their respective countries, where Africa Development Bank is going to work with the National Financing Institution, where they are going to work on the product, how the criteria, who is well placed, and also to the technical assistance. And this is the component that I like most, because not only women are going to have the capacity building about how to work with the bank, but also they are going to work on the bank themselves to have products that are responding to women's needs. And this is something that was lacking. I said, as this is designed, once in implementation, we will have, for the first time, this area of activities, bear with me, the bankers who is here, where for the first time we see the institution, financial institution, understanding women. because sometimes all is blind. They are clients, they are SMEs, they are cooperative, so no data desegregation, no who is who, so all are clients and the products are similar. And when you don't understand the women, you can't serve them appropriately. That's the fact. So for you who wanted to go into gender equality, women economic empowerment, it's important that you understand fully, you put your gender lenses to understand who are women, what are their needs, what they need, how they need it, because all these details are very important to serve women. I wish to stop here and say that the work is coming to different countries, as here in Rwanda, as we will go into implementation, bringing on board all partners. We've said about women and the bank or financial institutions, but there are other partners, civil society organization, media who are here present, members who are here present and represented, and all partners on the ground for the interest of uplifting the lives of women that we here serve all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. Before we get to the part where we start asking questions or receiving questions from journalists, it is important that we do emphasize and stress that this press conference today is focusing on the Multilateral Development Bank segment of this summit. There is a whole nother full day of partner activities tomorrow that we encourage you to attend and participate and engage. But for right now, let's take some questions from the press. When we do this section, we'd like for the reporters to please mention their name, their outlet. It's important that we get questions, not statements. And also, please let us know who you're directing your question toward. Please, right there.
Sophie Mkwena from the South African Broadcasting Corporation. The issue of data is quite important. The question is directed to the minister as a political head on the table. The problem is, much as many people are advancing an argument that all citizens of the continent must have access to internet, at times you find political heads or governments closing down internet. How does this affect the economy of the continent? And your view about that, do you think it's wise for governments to always cut off internet, particularly when they feel threatened?
And just before we go on to our last one, I just wanted to be sure, was there a gender dimension that you wanted to bring into that? I'd be sure we had that correct. A gender dimension to the question. I didn't.
Since this is a gender summit.
All right, well, that's just fine. Why don't we take just one more question before we go to our guest to reply, please? Was there a third? Great, why don't we get right into the answers, please?
Thank you very much. So we have, from the very beginning, when we were trying to put together the topics of what this global summit was going to discuss, MDB, the multilateral development banks, have contributed to the main topics where other regions, other continents can bring in as good practices and promising approaches. There are quite a lot of similarities, actually, that we can discuss. And so we try to focus in these key areas, and in particular, this innovative financing instruments and to allow women entrepreneurs access, women business and economic empowerment. These are the areas that we brought in from other continents' experience. So in terms of the participants, yes, they are focused more on African continent, but we're trying to bring in the actual cases and the promising approaches from global regions. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go to the second question, but for the first one, for us, on the 1,219 guests that we had, over 700 were from out of Rwanda. So for us, and they are coming from all the continents, all continents were represented here. I was sitting, yesterday I was sitting, sorry for my bilingualism, I was sitting with a friend from Australia. So this is the farthest place to Rwanda. But the meaning, if the bank has chosen to come to Multilateral Development Bank, to come to a continent where there are levels of poverty, and everyone knows that women economic empowerment is one way of addressing sustainably the issue of sustainable economic development, and they have chosen Africa and putting in place a facility for African women. I don't have any complaint on that. The only thing that I wish is that facility, that all multilateral development banks are ready to go for and to help to support functions, so that in the next probably 10 years, because in sometimes 5 to 10 years, we can see tangible change. This is the only thing that I wish to appreciate. And if they find that there is a lot of problem in terms of climate change on the Asian continent, and when they go there, they focus on the issue of climate change there, I would go for. I wouldn't have any complaint. So for us, as they join from all this continent, they are accepted to join effort and to come here to especially address issue of women inclusion in finance. The important thing is that they are graded upon that. And the participants are coming from all continents, from all over the world. Otherwise, in a multilateralism, this kind of being one, I like the UN thinking, like one UN being many of them. So this is being one around something, wouldn't tamper with being multilateral, being global. We are in a globality, but if we have like a kind of constraint or a problem that is happening far away from us, but it touches us and we want to address it, going for it doesn't tamper with being global, even though we would have participants from that corner of the world. That's my own thinking, though. On the data matters, and there is one anonymous proverb saying that if you don't count, you don't count. That's data. I'm sure sometimes the third or fourth language of English, if you don't count, you don't count.
No, I like that.
So this is it. So in the data is the basis for planning. So one of the gentlemen who was presenting this afternoon on AFAWA had an important statement that was very amazing, saying that consider a football team with 11 players, and the coach says, no, I'm going to just use 5. I leave out 6 of them. How many chances has he to succeed for his team of 5 facing another team of 11? And without referring to this globality, that might have been behind the thinking of considering access to finance here in Africa. But coming to our continent, he said, if African women count for 51%, how can you concentrate on 49 men and leaving out 51? How do you expect to win? Conclusion was ours, but you may say that probably this is why we are lagging behind. I'm not saying it's true because there are other components, but that might be one of the aspects. So if something that you want to be productive, you invest in. And this is why we have to use this data. The data are very important, the use of internet, the use of ICT. And if we are not happy with the levels of where we are, let's put more effort, be very intentional to spread and to use our language, how to integrate it so that people can use the data in the technology to just cope with the new trend of development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Do we have more questions, please?
I am Bertha Yenwo from Cameroon. I want to thank everybody for this wonderful sharing of experience. I want to know, I am of the civil society. How am I going to connect with AFAR now that from here? Is it, if I have a project, am I going to come directly to AFAWA, or AFAWA is going to come to my country and meet the government, and I will pass through and need to pass through the government? I actually want to know the connection with AFAWA. If AFAWA, because you said AFAWA will be going very fast. So if I have to come to you, will it be through the government, or I should come directly to AFAWA? Thank you.
And the second question, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for this presentation. I'm Regina Osalulo from South Sudan. The minister, Honorable Minister, talked about policies and strategy and gender-sensitive policy to be put in place to enable, as a strategy to enable achievement of gender equality. Now sometimes you can have all those in place, policies, strategic plan, which are sensitive to gender, but you can have a community that mindset is on their culture, which is very difficult to change. It might take some time, maybe a generation. So we in South Sudan, we try to ensure that girls are kept in school by the government providing grant to them, because when it is a girl, they don't send her to school. And it is through education that girls can have decent job and have a decent living and take care of their children. And then another thing which other strategy is to work with the chiefs in the community. We work with the chief, bring them for training, and so that as they are the leaders within the rural community, they have to enforce ending child marriage. So that is two strategy that we have put in place, and we hope it will work. We just started. We launched our ending child marriage roadmap last year in June. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll turn over to our distinguished guests.
Should I start and then I can start? I think I would just, I'll mostly leave the second question from South Sudan to the minister, or comment. But I think that's a very poignant reminder of, while we're talking about sophisticated vehicles for financial inclusion, there's some of the basic things that, particularly in fragile environments, that we can't forget about. So thank you for reminding us of that. So in terms of the question from Cameroon, sorry, I'm like, where was the question from Cameroon again? Oh, sorry, there you are. I'm like, it's been a long 2 days. I've been sitting talking to lots of different groups of wonderful women, so I'm a little bit. So civil society is a critical part of everything that we're doing at the bank, and I'm sure it's the same at the Asian Development Bank and certainly at the others. I can tell you, and that's why I was looking at Amel, and Amel, I wasn't gonna make you answer, but Amel is our manager for gender, and there's a counterpart of hers who oversees civil society. Because we're integrating civil society voices very, very closely into everything that we're doing, because we know it actually improves everything we do. So that's not even talking about AFAWA yet. But it just so happens that in our last civil society meeting, where we meet with leaders from all the different regional civil society institutions who are then regrouping a lot of the institutions in the countries, they wanted to talk about AFAWA and how to integrate civil society into AFAWA. So just to tell you, we are looking at it. So that's the macro answer, right? I mean, just to let you know, and it would be good for you to quickly talk to Amel, because I would love for you to have a link to our civil society team, and that we can talk about offline. But just in general, look, we're not going to be providing a lot of there's so much technical assistance that's going to happen, right? We're not going to provide that directly. We're a bank, right? I mean, we're a development bank, but we're a bank. We provide funding for that. And so most of the funding for AFAWA will go into a guarantee facility, but a big part of it will go into technical assistance. Now, that technical assistance, again, we're not reinventing the wheel. Civil society institutions that are already doing good things in terms of training women, in terms of bringing together women entrepreneurs, and of course there's going to be a bit of a competition. You'll have to apply for the funding, but it will go out because we have our own rules to follow in terms of any kind of financing. But it will be very decentralized. And the last thing I'll say on that, because I know that AFAWA tends to monopolize everything, is we're going on a roadshow soon to different countries. And so that's something just to make sure that we're linking civil society very, very closely into the discussions when we're going out. So then, if you'd like.
Thank you. For the second intervention, it was actually a comment which is very valid. And as you rightly said, having good laws, policies, this is a good thing, but it is not enough. And in our continent, and I think in other continents too, we have cultural barriers that are there. We have talked about achievements and successes. Probably we didn't have time to go into challenges, but the cultural barriers are in each and every country. And I congratulate you actually on these innovative strategies that you've found to include women, girls into education by providing free education, by engaging chiefs, and in our case also we have been innovative on working with the grassroots, because if you bring some new ideas from the top, and when you don't engage well the community, you can meet resistance and you will not get things done. So it's a great strategy, keep up, and in our case and in other countries also, it's important to engage the community if you want something that will tackle, change a bit the way they were used to do things. Thank you.
Just wanted to also refer to the South Sudan's experience. So we have also a lot of successful cases, and it is true, it is very difficult to change the mindset of within the household, within the community, and in societies in terms of perceptions of what men should be doing, women should be doing, and so on. So changing stereotypes is very difficult, but I share also the similar experience in Indonesia on child marriage, engaging the community religious leaders So, across different religions, across different societies and continents, there are a lot of similarities and common practices and common lessons that we can learn across. And this will bring us back to the whole issue of a global. So every woman's problem is actually global women's issue, particularly violence against women, not being able to do the work-life balance at workplace because of not having a sufficient support for childcare. And so this is how we see the value of the global lessons learned, exchanges, and we'd like to continue through the Multilateral Development Bank's group.
Great, thank you so much. I think we have time for just one more question, please. Right over that way, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Ofyong. I'm a journalist with Daily Trust newspaper in Abuja, Nigeria. I would like to know where women in conflict or women who are victims of conflict fit in all that you're talking about here. I haven't heard anything about them. And there's a rising number of them in Nigeria and in the regions around.
So let's take advantage of another hand I just saw go up. Please.
Talk about you guys. My question goes to all of you, and I just want to know what are the projects undertaken for the youth and sanitizing and creating awareness for youth empowerment into gender balance? Thank you.
And before you give the microphone back, could you please tell us your name and your organization? Thank you.
My name is Mandek. I am a student at the African Leadership University and intern at a communication company. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Distinguished panelists.
Okay. I think on the second one we can probably all answer, but I'll take a stab at the first one, which is a challenge. And I did just mention fragile environments. And we have our friends here from the Icrc sitting in the front who are great partners of ours. And I just would like to mention, AFAO is just getting started. So if you're talking about that in particular, and we're working through commercial banks. So to the extent that commercial banks are in these places, and often they are, but sometimes they're not, we would be able to get there. If they're not there, we're going to have to be creative. But I think we're certainly not going to forget about areas in conflict. I mean, we know that that would leave behind too much of Africa in the areas that need it the most. I would just like to mention that we do have a great partnership with Icrc where they are helping us to get into places we normally don't go. So whether it's certain parts of the Sahel, and so we have a couple of great projects, especially around job creation, that we're working on. There's a very close collaboration between the gender team with them. So, I know it's a partial answer, but we are exploring creative ways of working together in partnerships so that we're working on development issues even in areas that are usually seen as sort of humanitarian areas, if that makes sense. On the second question on youth, we know youth are not just the future, but the present of Africa. Actually, even just statistically, if you're not talking to young people, you're not talking to Africans. I could go on because as well as gender, youth employment, and that's one of my areas, cross-cutting themes that I'm responsible for at the African Development Bank. But suffice it to say that we have a whole initiative around empowering youth. Called Jobs for Youth. And we even have some bespoke programs in agriculture, which is called Enable Youth. And women are a huge part of the effort. And we will be making sure that it's not even a 50% question. We're massively, massively reaching out to young women through all of these efforts, because we know that, basically I'm so impressed by young people when I travel around Africa, and that is the solution. Because you guys see challenges everywhere, and they are opportunities. So.
Thank you. I'd like to answer on the second question on the youth, and indeed, We do in Asia Pacific, in an Asian Development Bank, we also have a similar program that is engaging the youth in a very big way. But in our region, we also have the major issue, which is a demographic issue, which is the aging society. And actually, that's also where the youth, the role of the youth group are particularly important for them to come in and then see, because the whole pressure, whether it's the economic pressure, the tax-paying pressure, and also the caretaking pressures will come down to the youth group. So we have the program to involve the youth group in this whole conversation and the discussion and policy making in some of the countries. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish to bring two short comments on the women in conflict. We here in Rwanda, we have women that are in refugee camps, and the important development programs that we carry out, they are included. And even the children, last week we had on the International Children's Right Convention celebration, International Children's Day, we had even the representation of children from the refugee camps, because we know that they are in the situation in which they haven't contributed to. They are victims of the conflict and situations that affect them. Actually, they are most affected than those out of in the community. So all important programs that we have, actually we have some with UN Women and with UN organizations, be it regarding women, children, we include them with that because we know that the situation in which will not last, and when they go out in their community, it is important that they are not left out. Why they have been staying in Rwanda, where we have that principle of not leaving anyone behind. So they are included in what we are talking about. Of course, we are in collaboration with other organizations catering for them particularly, but any good product that we are going to have, they will not lack to benefit from it. Regarding the youth, with regard to access to finance, for instance, the strategy that I mentioned sometimes back, it's actually the strategy for youth and women and youth to access to finance. And we have a tailored program which is called the National Employment Program that is specifically the main beneficiaries are youth, and it helps them in terms of capacity building, providing them with startups and toolkits. But we don't reach everything because of lack of the fund, may lack some means, and we know that whenever we have a facility that is coming to help people to access to finance, we're talking about women, but also there are girls as are women. So we will not lack to include them. They have to benefit all of them to these new facilities that are coming. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And this will conclude our Multilateral Development Bank segment press conference for today.